Hi, I'm Dan Hoyt from the Best Game Site Ever, and Square Enix has recently announced plans to port or remake the first 8 Dragon Quest games for tablets and smartphones. This wonderful news gives me the opportunity to discuss why Dragon Warrior is one of the best and most influential games ever. It also gives me the justification to fulfill one of my childhood dreams by finally defeating the evil Dragon Lord and saving the Kingdom of Alfgard. Dragon Quest, as it was called in Japan, was created by Yuji Horii and was originally released in 1986. Horii took a great deal of inspiration from other games like Ultima and Wizardry. He intended for the series to be on a console to make it more available to a wider audience, and was hoping to expose the role-playing genre to more Japanese gamers. He also found the PC interface for many RPGs to be incredibly intimidating, so these simpler menus would seem more user-friendly. Dragon Quest was a smashing hit in Japan, but when it arrived in North America, it was a colossal flop. NES gamers just didn't get the game at first. So Nintendo and Enix practically gave Dragon Warrior away. They promised a copy of Dragon Warrior with every new or renewed subscription to Nintendo Power. Since subscriptions were only $20 at the time, Nintendo Power got over 500,000 new or renewed subscriptions, and Western gamers were reluctantly introduced to RPGs. The Western version of Dragon Warrior even had a few alterations to improve the game. In the original Dragon Quest, characters always faced forward regardless of which direction they were moving. When the game arrived stateside, though, characters could actually look at each other. When the game was translated to English, most of the dialogue had an old-timey pseudo-Elizabethan style to add to the role-playing. And another wonderful improvement to the game was a battery backup built into the cartridge that allowed players to save their quest without needing to use some kind of password system, which had been the norm for longer games until then. While this piece of technology was originally used in The Legend of Zelda, it's worth noting that this was a fairly new and technologically advanced improvement. Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball, even did the artwork for the game, and was responsible for one piece of content that never made it to the United States. Apparently, the original Dragon Quest features a woman who offers to sell the hero Puff Puff, which is a Japanese slang term for rubbing her breast on his face. One can only imagine Toriyama giggling to himself each time our hero interacts with this woman. Unfortunately, when the game was translated to English, her dialogue was changed to be about tomatoes instead. The plot itself is fairly straightforward. A peaceful kingdom is suddenly attacked by an evil wizard/dragon. The princess is captured, and the king calls upon you as the hero of destiny to rescue the princess and defeat the Dragon Lord. For those of us that have played just about any fantasy RPG, it sounds vaguely familiar. Think of it as Skyrim from 1986. Before you get around to questing, though, Dragon Warrior asks you to name your hero of destiny and, oddly enough, uses a complicated logarithm derived from the letters in your name to decide your initial statistics and the growth of individual statistics based upon what you named your character. It's actually kind of crazy, but certain names will get you more strength, health, magic, or agility. Not many people know this about Dragon Warrior, but it's a perfect example of the amount of ridiculous detail that went into this game. When you get around to questing, you'll find the menu system fairly Spartan. When in combat, you choose between fight, spell, run, and item. The spells are simplistically named: heal, sleep, hurt, heal more, hurt more. I love the simplicity. There is no fire, ice, shock, or spells like that. There is hurt, and hurt more. The kingdom is huge and there is relatively few towns. The sparsity of warm beds actually adds to the tension of the experience, so you will frequently find yourself hoping to make it back to civilization before you run into something. The towns are wonderful chains of pace, offering villagers, shopkeepers, and other adventurers to converse with. The townsfolk give out hints as to where certain items or events are at, and this gives the player direction on where to proceed with the quest, since there is nothing stopping you from traveling around the kingdom except the level of monsters you fight. While I've spent hours playing this game in my youth, it wasn't until recently that I realized the order in which I quested was actually kind of... not so much wrong as probably not the best way, which explains why I'd never actually beat this game until last night. My particular path always led me to way more grinding than was necessary, which is the only real problem with the game. There is hours of grinding for money and experience, which forces you to constantly be battling the biggest, baddest enemies you can take, and one slip-up or a few failed attacks will get you the "Thou art dead" text, along with an incredibly expensive trip back to the castle and an almost patronizing speech from King Lorik. there was always a sinking feeling associated with a sudden attack from a magical opponent who I knew could cast sleep on me and then proceed to beat my unconscious body until thou art dead. The dungeons are where the real tension mounts. A lack of light combined with interruptions of fighting makes them feel cramped and confusing and will often lead heroes to become disoriented and struggling to escape before their torch, herbs, or magic runs out. Some of the most desperate moments of gaming in my life have occurred in the darkness of Dragon Warrior, as I struggle to orient myself and find the right set of stairs that leads back to fresh air. I remember years ago I barely escaped a cave, only to die a few feet from the entrance when I ran out of both herbs and magic. It was not a good day. In fact, I remember immediately removing Dragon Warrior from my Nintendo, putting it in a black plastic case and setting it next to my TV. There it sat, almost mocking me for the next few days while I played Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers instead. The open world exploration aspect of Dragon Warrior is where it really shines. You choose which quests to follow, where to explore, and when to take on that dragon or axe knight. In fact, it's even possible to complete the game without rescuing the princess. I wouldn't advise it, but it's entirely possible. There's even an alternate ending where the Dragon Lord offers you the chance to rule half the kingdom. By the way, if a Dragon Lord offers you half the kingdom to rule, just say no. Dragon Warrior borrows some concepts from other games, but ultimately it was Dragon Warrior's success and role-playing experience that laid the foundation for many of the fantasy RPG games that were developed in the 80s and 90s. Even games like Final Fantasy attribute much of their success to Dragon Warrior. Prior to Dragon Warrior, Dungeons and Dragons was the main inspiration for most fantasy RPG games, but Dragon Warrior changed much of that. Even the great Shigeru Miyamoto attributes much of the development and gaming narrative to the success of Dragon Warrior. Other core elements of Dragon Warrior are still featured prominently in more recent games, like the turn-based battle system, which was originally created to make up for limitations in gaming technology, but is still commonly the basis for combat in many RPGs. The effect that Dragon Warrior had on video games is clearly visible today in games like On the Rain-Slick Precipice of Darkness, The Elder Scrolls, Guild Wars, and Pokemon, to name a few. Just to pull another interesting comparison out of the many, romance is part of Dragon Warrior. Pretty basic romance, but romance nonetheless. After rescuing Princess Gwaelin, she gives you her love, which allows you to check how close you are to leveling up from anywhere, and gives you directions in relation to Tentacle Castle, which makes finding Erdrick's token much easier. Now I know this romance might not be incredibly impressive, but is wearing an Amulet of Mara in Skyrim really that much more nuanced? I could go on about the epicness that is Dragon Warrior, but I'll restrain myself. It occupies a space where it is excellent, influential, and deeply flawed all at the same time. It's been remade, modded, ported, and celebrated almost since its creation. I really can't stress the importance of Dragon Warrior in gaming history enough, and while I know it will soon be remade for tablets in a few months, I feel the version most true to the vision of its creators has always been the NES Dragon Warrior. I understood a few of the refinements for the Game Boy Color, but making the game more complex with graphical upgrades, changing the names of characters, or giving the hero an expanded backstory was never necessary. I wish this would be what we would get from Square Enix, but unfortunately, I doubt it. There will probably be improvements or reimaginings that people think are necessary. Although, I can think of one enhancement I wouldn't mind. I would laugh so hard if they brought back the woman who sells Puff Puff. It was my favorite part of the Game Boy Color version. Thanks for stopping by and watching the video. Feel free to leave a comment since we encourage discussion even if we disagree with you. The point of these videos is to be a little nostalgic and remember some of the games that make up the foundation of modern gaming, and I hope you enjoyed my little nostalgia trip. If you really liked this, check out my previous video about the new Batman Arkham Origins and my distrust of game developers. Or look into my last Best Games Ever video about Sid Meier's Pirates. Be sure to stop by thebestgamesiteever.com for more reviews, features, news, and commentary about gaming, and feel free to like us on Facebook or subscribe to our channel because the internet is lonely, and we have poor self-esteem.